Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the annual youth service at First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to nurture the individual spirit and together build the beloved community. We are so glad you decided to join us this morning. On behalf of the church's high school youth group, Why Are You You?, we will miss being together in person with all of you this year. Following the safety guidelines for social distancing made it difficult to decide which of us in Why Are You You should be at the church leading the service this morning, while the rest of us watched from home. So that's why this year's youth service is entirely pre-recorded. We're all at home watching right along with you. The church remains dedicated to providing the gift of worship every Sunday. And what a blessing it is that we can continue to gather this way. Last Sunday, more than 850 households streamed our worship service live. Right after today's service, at 11:45, Reverend Bill Sinkford will have his quarterly question and answer session. It will include an update on the state of the church, including the proposed church budget for the coming year. Bring your questions for Bill about the life of the church or anything you have on your mind. At the end of the service, you can click on the QR code or you can find the Zoom link in this week's e-news. Once again, welcome. This chalice was made by Max, who will share his homily later in the service. This is the chalice we light on Sundays in Why Are You You? If you have a chalice at home with you, we invite you to light it now. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. May we be reminded of the blessings of courage and love in the world, in one another, and within ourselves. Come, let us worship together. We invite you to join us at home in singing Love Will Guide Us.
For all that we speak as a culture and a people, of victory and defeat, of good and evil, of hero and coward, none of it is quite true. The truth is that the greatest victory is to endure with grace and humor, to stay in the game, to achieve humility. Maybe if we celebrate grace under duress rather than the illusion of total victory, we will be less surprised and more prepared. When illness or evil lurch into our lives, as they always will, and maybe we will be a braver and better people if we know we cannot obliterate such things, but only wield oceans of humor and patience and creativity against them. We have an untold supply of those extraordinary weapons. Don't you think?
I've been Time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. Changing 'cause I built my life around you. Time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. Oh, I'm getting older too. Take another, take it down. Climbed a mountain and I turned around. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, landslide will bring me down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, the landslide will bring me down. Oh, the landslide will bring me down. Spirit of love, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots that wings, set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Wait, is it Trevor?
Owen,
Wait, what are you doing here?
I haven't seen you in forever. I thought the sanctuary was closed.
I could ask you the same thing. Wait, hold on. Oh my gosh, Trevor, it's that time of year.
Youth service time?
You know what that means. Everybody, welcome to the fourth and unfortunately the last Trevor and Owen show.
You know, we have had some splendid times over the years. It's really been a thrill to share these moments with you every year for the past 4 years. And so I'd just like to say a thank you to all of our fans out there for sticking with us, for appreciating the show, and for tuning in once a year every spring. It really means the world to us.
It does. And we just want to give you guys the best show possible. And we are doing that today with the best story possible. We got Where the Wild Things Are.
And so with that, I think it's time for a little change of scenery and a little change of attire. And if you at home are watching and you happen to have a wolf suit, please put it on. And please join us as we give you our rendition of Where the Wild Things Are.
Kick it off, Trevor.
The
night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another, and his mother called him Wild Thing.
And Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything.
That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew, and grew, and grew, until his ceiling hung with vines, and the walls became the world all around, and an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max.
And he sailed off through night and day, and in and out of weeks and almost a year to where the wild things are.
And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws.
Till Max said, "Be still!" and tamed with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once.
And they were frightened, and called him the most wild thing of them all, and made him king of the wild things.
"And now," cried Max, "let the wild rumpus start." "Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all.
Then all around, from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are.
But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No."
And the wild things roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws.
But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye, and sailed back over a year, and in and out of weeks, and through a day.
And into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him, and it was still hot.
Wow. Well, to everyone here watching at home, I would just like to say thank you for the best 4 years of my life. And being able to put on this show for you guys once a year has been an incredible honor for me. And I just want to say thank you.
Unfortunately, it is time to put the hats away one last time, but we've made some great memories here, and we'll remember them forever. Thank you.
And goodbye.
This is the time in the service when we ask you to support the work of the church. Today's offering will support the YRUU Civil Rights Pilgrimage Fund. Last summer, 15 of us in YRUU traveled to Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. As a congregation, you trusted us as high schoolers to make the most of our time in the South, and to carry those lessons with us so that movements for justice become more than what we study in history class. They're what we help create in the future. The church's spiritual theme for the month of May is trust. We thank you for your trust in us. We offer these images and reflections from last summer's journey in appreciation for your continued generosity to help support the next YRUU Civil Rights Pilgrimage. Thank you.
This is the time in the service when we hold up the joys and concerns of our community. Member Ron Jamgard was nearing the end of his life last Thursday when these concerns were recorded. We hold Ron, his wife Shirley, and their whole family at this tender time. Norma Conant, grandmother of staff member Cassandra Sheffman, died on April 27th at the age of 94. She was like a parent in raising Cassandra, who attributes many of her core values to her grandmother. She will be remembered for her genuine kindness and generosity toward all people and animals, dedication to her family, and spirit of helping. Cassandra appreciates being held in your thoughts through this time of loss. And a joy. Members Gianna and Ellen Summers are pleased to share the news of the birth of their grandson, Micah Summers Polk. Micah was born on March 2nd to Tori and her partner Prince Polk. Micah joins big brother Marquess, age 8.
Will you pray with me? God of all names and no name, guide us to believe in the power of blessings that bring us together as a world. Music, words, songs, stories. In these days of uncertainty, may we remember that it is beautiful and humbling that we get to exist, to think, to be. May we continue to be courageous and kind, even when we are scared, especially when we are scared. May we continue to share those blessings that bring us together as a world. May we continue to choose love. So be it. Blessed be. Let us now be together for a moment of silence. Last October, during the first YRUU overnight of the church year, we gathered for a worship service on the chancel in Elliott Chapel and sang this next hymn. We had just learned about the death of Bill Michtam, a longtime volunteer teacher in the church's youth program. In his nearly 20 years as a member of this community, Bill never missed an opportunity to show his support for YRUU on youth service Sundays. So we didn't want to miss the opportunity to dedicate this hymn to Bill. We invite you to join us at home in singing along to I'll Fly Away.
Some bright morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to that home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life are gone, I'll fly away. Like a bird from these prison walls I'll fly. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning. joys will never end. Have thy way. Have thy way, oh glory. Have thy way in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. Have thy way. Have thy way, oh glory. Have thy way in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. Have thy way. Have thy way.
I find that many religions are just like math class. You listen and get a bunch of rules you have to follow, and if you do it right, you get the correct answer. In many fundamentalist branches of Christianity, for example, if you follow Jesus or apologize for your sins, you get into heaven. It's simple, located in a book, and most of the time unquestioned. Some of these religions are placed in this bubble of norms that don't allow for exploring and creates a fear of asking the hard questions or having the hard conversations. Math to me seems full of conformed answers that I just have to absorb like a sponge and then be expected to understand, without a clear reason for its importance in my life. Unitarian Universalism, on the other hand, is not at all like math. We don't look for that one answer and that one way of understanding something that only creates one conclusion. There's a saying that goes, "A conclusion is the place we got tired of thinking." If we get tired of thinking, then where do we go? How do we continue? Lucky for me, I don't like math, nor am I good at it. I like abstract thinking, and the idea that there can be multiple rights to something. If you ask any of my friends, they would tell you, I like talking. A lot. So it's not surprising that I find this connection so relatable. The classes that I do find important are the ones like English or anthropology, where discussion is the rubric and the ability to converse is how the student can succeed. We as Unitarian Universalists engage regularly in a dialogue of acceptance, not always in a dialogue of seeking to understand. And what I mean by this is, within any of our 7 principles, we believe that everyone can do what they want to do and be whoever they want to be. And this doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with everything one may say or do, but we accept who they are and treat them with the same respect and honor as we do ourselves. It feels like we value acceptance over the understanding because we realize that we can't always understand. I attended the Civil Rights Pilgrimage with YRUU last summer, and we can study the history of the South for over a week, but still not get it. Not understand why innocent people were tortured and not fully comprehend the emotions they went through because we can never physically or emotionally empathize like that. That doesn't mean we have to stop trying to understand. The goal isn't to give up, but rather channel a new way of thinking and sympathizing and take on that challenge of working and writing through the uncomfortableness that we feel when we hear words like racism be mentioned. Spending a week in the South doesn't automatically give us the ability to know everything there is to know about racism, but it encourages us to continue to step into the uncomfortableness and honor and respect to the experience. Like the South welcomed us. 15 white teens from Portland with open arms and hopes that their message can get through for what our future can be. When people ask me what Unitarian Universalism is, I tell them that we believe in love and peace and love and peace. I mean, so much, I guess. It's hard to explain because there is no one answer that ties it up with a neat little bow in such a way that it will satisfy them. But in an odd way, I find that comforting. We as Unitarian Universalists know we aren't perfect. That's why I love it, actually. We know that we can't just heal a person of cancer or solve gun violence with a simple prayer, but rather offer spiritual healing or create a radical change through real action and speaking out. Through these 14 years I have attended First Church, there is so much I have not only learned but experienced. And what stands out the most is simply the concept of diving into tough topics. It's been interesting to notice how people react when engaging in conversations about sex or gender, racism, guns, or equality. I was sitting at lunch in school a couple months ago with a mixed group of beliefs amongst my classmates. talking about abortion and women losing the right to choose. On the YRU Youth Civil Rights Tour last summer, we visited a reproductive health clinic in Alabama. This experience added to my passion during this conversation. And one boy told me, "Whoa, Sarah, chill, you're getting intense." Another said, "Hey Sarah, too aggressive." When really, all I did was ask them to share their thoughts and listen as I share mine. We don't practice this as a larger society, and I know it's hard for some to engage in real conversations, especially when conflict is at stake, or when they haven't grown up in a congregation that promotes a healthy and productive conversing lifestyle like I have. But I had figured that wasn't within my own peers or friends, right? But to sit there listening to guys tell me that they know more or to tell me to calm down, I realized quickly that the gift of discussion and knowledge through YRUU and the congregation was not something to take for granted. All those classes, learning about various religions in 3rd grade, sex ed in 7th grade, figuring out what I believe in 8th, traveling to Boston to learn the history of Unitarian Universalism influence, was powerful because we got to take the time to discuss real topics with the people we love, trust, and grew up with. There are times a sponge is useful, and it's good to absorb information. But I realize that it's only useful if we know what to do with that information and why it's an important thing in our lives. These experiences and conversations are what being a Unitarian Universalist is all about. I had this incredible insight and compassion and drive to speak out that I've adapted from my peers and the people of this community. And this will equip me to be a powerful and strong force in the world. I love that we don't have a simple answer or a specific mythology like in math. And even though my math teachers love to tell us that we will always use it in our daily lives, I'm not so sure answers are always the goal. Instead, they are the foundation for asking deeper questions and thinking bigger, which, after all, is the most important lesson a class or religion could teach. Thank you.
Hello. I would like to break down a metaphor for you all, since I like to overthink and overcomplicate things. Now, ever since I was young, I've always wondered about the metaphor of early or late bloomers. It seemed weird to me, but I decided that, as is typical of me, I was overthinking it. I decided to break it down and apply it to my own life to see if it would work. Now, an early or late bloomer means that there is only one point in our lives where we magically transform into an adult and are finally ready to face the world before eventually wilting away. So surely there must be a point in my life where I magically became an adult, right? Maybe it's the point in the summer between 5th and 6th grade where I lost my entire friend group in a massive fight, but decided I was going to pick myself up and try to make friends anyways in middle school. That's a big moment for a 10-year-old. But to say it blooms so early means I haven't grown since then. That doesn't seem right. But okay, I still have 7 years of my life to look at. The metaphor can still work out. The next big moment was probably deciding to go on the coming of age Boston trip. I left my parents to go across the states. That's a huge growth moment. Well, the pond was really scenic, and it was so cool to visit another Unitarian Universalist church on the other side of the states. But that still doesn't feel right. I've had other growth moments too. Let's keep looking. What about the string of 3 years wherein one friend walked away from me, another clung to me like I was their only life preserver, and yet another couldn't accept me when I set up boundaries? I was still mentally sound after all that. I still have healthy relationships and making new ones. Surely that must be the moment. But then again, I went to Spain without mom and dad, and I went on the civil rights trip last summer to the South. Now I'm writing novels and taking criticism about them so I can publish them. I keep working on my art even though it's a struggle to get better. I've advocated for a counselor for myself and seen my relationships with that family grow. I've gotten a job dog walking and then a job in the nursery at the church. I found myself a Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D, group to play with, and then I created another D&D group. I've shaved half my head, and I've started using power tools, sewing machines, and X-Acto knives after injuring myself 6 years ago. I'm taking parkour, or trying to, and I'm still getting over my fear of the dark. And then there's this whole new situation evolving around me with the virus, and I'm losing my senior year and my senior youth service, and yet I'm staying happy and productive. Surely those two are growth moments. So perhaps the term early bloomer or late bloomer doesn't actually work. We are pretty and we are diverse, like flowers. We also last winter after winter. We wilt and we regrow and we keep growing. And looking back, I'm proud of myself. From the little kid on the side of the playground playing doctor and ever the outcast, to a young woman with friends around her that support her and care for her, a career set ahead of her, and a whole church she can return to time and time again when she needs help. I've already bloomed, but I'll keep blooming as I learn new skills that become an adult and growing. Because people are not flowers. Thank you.
All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up to say goodbye. The dawn is breaking, it's early morn. The taxi's waiting, he's blowing his horn. Already I'm so lonesome I could die. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go. There's so many times I've let you down. So many times I've played around. I tell you now that they don't mean a thing. Every place I go, I'll think of you. Every song I sing, I'll sing for you. When I come back, I'll wear your wedding ring. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go. Now the time has come to leave you one more time. Let me kiss you, close your eyes. I'll be on my way. Dreaming about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the times I won't have to say. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh babe, I hate to go.
The week before I went back to school from summer break, I got this passion for watching as many movies as possible while I still had time. So over this week, I watched something like 10 movies. I know, what a way to spend the week, right? One of these movies was Where the Wild Things Are, a movie based on the incredible children's book that I absolutely loved as a kid. Before I even watched it, I watched the trailer to decide if I wanted to spend my time watching the full thing, and even from that, I felt a rush of nostalgia come flooding back. So I watched the movie. First off, it was such a weird movie. The Wild Things were these big stuffed animals that beat each other up constantly and worship the main character, Max, like a king. And one of them was voiced by the guy who played Tony Soprano, and there was a chicken wild thing for some reason. But more importantly, what I realized about the movie was how much I remembered it. More so, how much I remembered watching it. The movie came out in 2009 when I was 7, and I hadn't seen it since, but the feeling I initially had of being in utter awe of this film was still fresh in my mind. There's one scene where the main Wild Thing, Carol, takes Max to his hideout, where he and all the others built this huge mountain range out of twigs. While the scene itself is very emotional, as Carol talks about how none of them except him ever come back to this hideout, I had to turn the movie off and take a break to stop from completely breaking down. Like I said earlier, a rush of nostalgia hit, but it wasn't that made that scene so hard to watch. It was the fact that all these memories of when I was a kid were still in me, but they're so far back there in my head that I don't know if I'll ever get them back again. You see, when I transitioned from 5th to 6th grade, I had to completely change the way I acted and the things I liked because they weren't good anymore. I couldn't act in the same way I did the previous year because then I'd be an outcast. No one would like me. Or at least that's what I thought. So what I ended up doing was repressing all these happy memories with only a faint hope of ever getting them back. Some of them I'll never be able to do. I remember for a while when I was a kid, my entire family would walk to the library since it was only about 10 minutes away on a trail, and we'd pick out a movie, or I'd look at Magic Treehouse and then we'd walk back. I think I was 8 or 9 when I checked out the Odyssey because I read Percy Jackson and thought I really liked Greek mythology all of a sudden. I remember there was this bump that our car would go over when we were coming back to my house, and how I always dreaded it because it gave me a headache. I remember in our family, everyone in our family had their own DS, which, if you don't know, is a little portable Nintendo game console. Mine was black, my brother's blue, my dad's red, and my mom's gray. I remember when we first got our dog, and we were driving her up from Eugene because that's where the breeder was, and she puked the second that we got home. All these things I remember now, I didn't know. I don't know if I'll ever would have without this movie. Without this movie making me realize the extent to which I've repressed. Many of these things I've, at one time or another, found completely embarrassing, and because of it never really wanted to talk or even think about them again. But I've realized that they aren't bad or embarrassing. They're me. That place where all of those events I listed off happened was sold just at the turn of the new year this year. I said goodbye to my house of 17 years in October. Sometimes when I have time to kill before a club meeting or school starts, I'll drive by my old house. I'll go the speed limit until I get to my house, then slow to about 5 miles per hour and just check in. I go over that same speed bump that gave me headaches for so many years, this time in my own car, driving to a high school that I drove by for so many years and had no idea what the building was, looking towards college in a city I'd never even heard of when I was little. There's so much I've yet to do and so many memories that I'll for sure make. Maybe someday my kids will be having the same realization after watching a movie that brought back memories they'd forgotten. I don't ever want to forget the things that have happened in my life, even the embarrassing things, but I'm bound to. That's life, and however messed up and sad it is, it's uncontrollable. But what I can do is appreciate what I can remember and hold on to them as tightly as possible while making room for those that I'll make in the rest of my life. Thank you.
I've been coming to this church since before I could walk. Now looking back, I'm more than grateful for everything this church has taught me, but I can't say that's how it's always been. As a high schooler, I've enjoyed spending my Sunday mornings in Why Are You You, but I did not share those same feelings as an elementary schooler. I was one of the many children who would spend endless amounts of time on Sunday mornings trying to explain to my parents that Sunday school was not something I needed to attend. However, I was thrilled by the fact that we never had to go to church during the summer or on holidays. Still, I've accomplished many milestones at the church, a few of the most memorable being the first time I was allowed to walk up the stairs to class alone. When I marched confidently into my first grade class, telling my teachers I was now able to walk up the stairs alone, they celebrated my success with me, telling me how proud they were of how independent I was becoming. As a sixth grader, my parents told me I would be taking Our Whole Lives, the church's sexuality education program. I was revolted by this idea and completely lost my mind when my dad told me he would be teaching it. I explained to him that if he expected me to take a sex ed course on the weekends, he better not be my teacher. At the end of my 8th grade year, I was one of the people fortunate enough to go on the coming-of-age Boston pilgrimage, when we learned so much not only about ourselves, but the world around us, the people we could become, and where we got a rather large taste of freedom for just being in middle school. As a high schooler this past summer, I went with some of the members of YRUU on a civil rights tour in the South. The trip was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. We met freedom riders who had been on death row for wanting equality. Even with all the difficult things we saw and heard, we were able to grow so much together. The last night of the trip, a group of us sat until 4 a.m. talking about everything under the sun. Although it made for a very sleepy-eyed wake-up call only a few hours later, I wouldn't change it for any full night of sleep. I can't say I've loved every second of being at church on Sundays, but I am more than grateful that my parents never once gave in to my complaining about coming. As I head to college this fall, I will deeply miss walking into the YRUU room on Sunday mornings and sharing stories with my dear friends about the past week. Even though it's highly unlikely I will be listening to Unitarian sermons every Sunday in college, I will definitely be back here at this church, as long as it's not on a holiday or in the summer. No matter how far from Portland I may end up, hearing Spirit of Life will always remind me of home. Thank you.
I live in outer East Portland, and I actually originally attended the tiny East Rose UU Fellowship in Gresham for over a decade. But over the years, there were fewer and fewer kids there my own age, until eventually I was the only older kid there. That's when my mom intervened and started driving us downtown on Sundays so I could be a part of the youth program here at First Unitarian. During my time here, I was able to go on the Boston pilgrimage. At first, I didn't want to go because, well, I didn't really know anyone. But both my mom and Nicole, who leads the youth program here at the church, kept encouraging me. And in the end, I did go to Boston, and it was one of the best weeks of my life. Then came last summer's civil rights pilgrimage to Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. And going into it, I ran into some of the same reservations that I had worried about going into Boston. Like, why is my mom doing this for me? Or will I be able to be a meaningful part of the group? But just like in Boston, the civil rights pilgrimage was one of the most magical weeks of my life. Our time together was a blend of wonder, of tears, of laughter, of frustration, and of hope. Now, I'm a senior, and obviously this wasn't how I envisioned everything unfolding this spring. I was expecting to perform and compete one last time with my orchestra and my choir. I was planning to go to prom. I was ready to graduate in a sea of red caps and gowns in June. I was preparing to go on a road trip with my friends. On social media, I have heard a lot of people saying that they can't wait for everything to just go back to normal. Forgive me, but what was normal? Children in cages, sexual predators on our Supreme Court, ecological breakdown on a global scale, US-made bombs killing civilians in Yemen, disease, famine, and suffering so long as they are reserved for developing countries. I can go on. I've had it pretty lucky in the grand scheme of things. I'm white male born into a middle-class family in a global superpower in a relatively peaceful time in human history. But even just consider outer East Portland. Lots of kids in my neighborhood have never left Oregon, let alone have flown across the country. And I'm no more deserving than any of them, yet I had the honor to go. I got to go to the Equal Justice Initiative museums in Montgomery, Alabama. I got to stand in the dusty, almost empty streets of Sumner, Mississippi, the town that seems to be haunted by the ghost of Emmett Till. I walked through the streets of Selma, Alabama, where the jungle is starting to take back old, abandoned buildings. I was just feet away from the very balcony in the Lorraine Motel where MLK was assassinated. I have had opportunities that many of my friends in my neighborhood haven't. I've had people who have believed in me and encouraged me. And now that this chapter of my life is coming to a close, I feel that I have an obligation that goes with everything I've been given. The opportunities I was given were not meant for me to just simply have meaningful experiences and then continue on unchanged. Instead, they were predicated on the understanding that I would go forward into this uncertain world and reciprocate the love and hope that I was offered. In other words, I now have a duty. My life will be incomplete without a meaningful dedication to service, to improve the beautiful yet deeply scorched world around me. But to tell you the truth, at times I can't help but feel so inadequate and powerless as an individual. On the pilgrimage in the South, I wrestled with the unsettling fear that the energy, the inspiration, and the momentum from the civil rights movement had dried up. Voter suppression has re-emerged from the woodwork. Mass incarceration has proven to be the next extension of slavery and Jim Crow, and bigotry is once again back in the mainstream. And for much of my life, I've wrestled with a deep, lurking sense of self-doubt. And as I enter the next chapter of my life, I don't have any piercing clarity. If anything, the opportunities that I've been given have only given me more questions than answers. Like, how do I make something of my parents' love? How do I measure whether or not I've been part of the solution or just another self-serving jerk on the sidelines? How do I make the church's investment in me worth it? How do I find balance and stability in a world that sometimes feels like a massive, never-ending forest fire? To claim that I have conquered any lingering sense of inadequacy or that I have emerged with a perfect, guiding blueprint would be a lie. And maybe it's natural this way. Maybe it's healthier not to always just judge whether or not you are enough or your entire life is somehow enough. And maybe that it is probably better to just focus on the today alone and whether or not today is aligned with the wisdom and love I have found in Boston, in the South, and at First Unitarian. Alas, I will leave you with a fond image that I like to remember whenever I am scared or uncertain. On our last day of the Civil Rights Pilgrimage, we were in Memphis, and we went to a UU church that stands on a hillside. And from within its chapel, one can gaze through its massive windows and behold the mighty Mississippi River below. One can look out across and see its current and its strength and its bright sparkles. It has flowed for millennia, and it is pure. Thank you.
Should have stayed with the signs I ignored. Can I help you not to hurt anymore? We saw brilliance when the world was asleep. There are things that we can have but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. The reminders pull the floor from your feet. In the kitchen, one more chair than you need. Oh, Who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Well, I do.
On March 30th of my sophomore year, my friend Zenzi died from chemotherapy complications after being diagnosed with leukemia 3 days prior. They had left for a backpacking trip over spring break, and although they had been feeling a little under the weather for the past few weeks, cancer wasn't even a remote possibility in anyone's mind. Suddenly ill, they were airlifted to Salt Lake City to undergo immediate treatment. I received a text on Wednesday, and I had no time to process any of what was happening before Zenzi passed away only a few short days later. For most of my life, I knew Zenzi as Sam. Tall, brown hair often streaked with pink or green or blue, full of energy, music, and spirit. I had known them since kindergarten, and although we were in separate classes at the K-8 school we attended, we became close friends in the later years of our time there. In middle school, we rode bikes to each other's houses in the summer, went to movies at the mall, and had water balloon fights in our backyards with our friends. We became even closer the first semester of high school, and were nearly inseparable in our theater class, where we performed a scene from Alice in Wonderland together. Zenzi was the hare, and I was Alice. But I started playing baseball that winter. I dropped theater, and Zenzi and I began to drift apart. At around the same time, they stopped going by Stam, started using gender-neutral pronouns, and changed the way they dressed to better represent themselves. Finally, Zenzi could be who they were on the inside, on the outside, to everybody. In retrospect, I'm incredibly proud of Zenzi for the bravery and courage it took to come out and express themselves to the fullest extent, especially in an environment as hostile and judgmental as high school. But at the time, I couldn't understand what was happening to the friend I thought I knew so well, the friend I had grown up with. Confused and scared of something I didn't understand, I couldn't realize that nothing about Zenzi had actually changed. They were still the same person I had always known and loved. The only difference is that they were finally able to reveal to the world who they truly were. There are so many reasons to remember and admire Zenzi. They were an exceptionally talented drummer and musician, and a loving and caring friend. But what inspires me the most about them was their ability to be completely and unapologetically themselves. Countless cliches come to mind with the words, "Be yourself," a message so seemingly simple and yet the most difficult challenge a high schooler can face. I often feel as if I have to be a different version of myself, or even play a different character based on who I am with, leaning on certain aspects of who I am, or even changing it completely in an attempt to fit in. So automatic and effortless that it barely crosses my mind, I slip between versions of myself, from school to baseball to debate team to family to church to the camp I work at, between different groups of friends. Being yourself in high school is incredibly difficult. I feel a constant pressure to be liked and to fit in, keeping me from embracing the weirder and more eccentric parts of my personality. However, here at this church and in Why Are You You, those social pressures fade away, and I feel like I am allowed and even encouraged to be exactly who I am without fear of judgment. The YRUU community has given me the opportunity and confidence to embrace who I am and discover who I want to be in the world. YRUU has given me mentors and role models, both in Jason and Nicole as supervisors and the upperclassmen who welcomed me into the group as a freshman. The relationships I have formed and the skills I have learned here have made me a far more compassionate and educated person, leader, and friend than I was before. Nicole and Jason and the community they helped create here in YRUU has been an instrumental part of my coming of age and my journey to feel more comfortable and embrace who I am and who I want to be. Together, they have built the groundwork that the rest of my life will be built upon. But of all the people who have made my experience here so incredible, there is no one I can thank more than this senior class. You have been the best friends I could have asked for. You truly bring out the best of me. When I'm with you, I'm exactly who I want to be and exactly who I am. Thank you.
Good morning. As you just saw, my name is Max Navy. I am a senior at Jefferson High School and, of course, a member of First Unitarian Church. My mom started bringing us to First Church back in 2004. We've been coming consistently ever since, her to services and my brothers and me to Sunday school or youth group. Over the years that we've been attending, we've probably asked my mom why we come to church hundreds of times. At first it was rhetorical, a way for us to complain about losing an hour and a half of our weekend to a religion that doesn't even give out complimentary wine and crackers. But she answered each time, and I gradually began to listen. Her answers came in three main categories. First, spirituality is important, and we need some in our lives. Second, I like getting together with a community once a week. And third, I love singing in churches. Even after I started listening to these reasons, they didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. First of all, there was the singing. Young Max flat out refused to sing in a room full of other people. Beyond that, the idea of spirituality didn't hold a whole lot of personal meaning to me, and while I understood that this was a community, it just wasn't one that I felt I was a part of. But I kept attending, and at some point I realized that I actually enjoyed coming to church. Even the singing. What I've realized over my decade and a half at First Church is that it is not only a place to gather in or occasionally live stream out of. It is also a reminder of what it is that we aspire to be. Everything about First Church, from the rituals to the community to the physical space itself, is filled with the intention to create a better world. The songs shared each Sunday are a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Singing is a voluntary action, something that we make a choice to take part in. Making that choice, committing to adding your part to the group's work, helps the community create something beautiful. The church itself works on a similar principle. We, several hundred people, make this choice to gather, in body or in spirit, every week and contribute to something greater. The act of being together lends us strength, and we are able to do together what would be unthinkable alone. In this unified movement to create connection and strength, we find deeper meaning. There is a whole wealth of possibility past the reach of the individuals among us. In reaching together, in gathering together, in singing together, we bring the way we want the world to be to life. We show it to the world that is, show that spirituality and community and song are possible, all through the simple, intentional acts of coming in and taking part. This intention is what makes me so enjoy coming to church. The world is imperfect, and so many of the places I spend time in seem to just accept that. It is refreshing to be in a community in which an individual want to make things better is not only recognized, but welcomed. So thanks, Mom. Spaces of intention like First Church are more important than ever in times of crisis. They serve as places of solace, reminders that the world can be improved, even from this. Now and in the future, I urge you to find those places in which you are able to be as you want to be, and to nurture them. Take part, improve the world, and take joy in doing so. Thank you all for being here. To the longtime members, thank you for your contributions to my time at First Church. And to the newcomers, thank you for contributing to the future.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. comes the sun, I say it's alright. Little darling, the smiles returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. 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 Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's alright. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, it's alright. It's alright.
Words from The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. The most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen nor touched. They are felt with the heart. May the love of this community continue to surround us and sustain us. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.